Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. Yesterday we read in Daniel chapter 5 of the king that took over the Babylonian kingdom over Belshazzar's kingdom, King Darius of the Medes. And in chapter 6 we have a further description of his kingdom. And we find that, this was a massive kingdom, so much so that he had to have 120 satraps and 3 commissioners to oversee the whole thing. And he had Daniel as one of those commissioners. And because Daniel was so wise, because he was so intelligent, because he handled himself so well, King Darius even wanted to elevate him, basically create a new position for him to oversee the whole kingdom. And this has the rest of the leaders concerned, and they want to take Daniel out. But they have a lot of difficulty doing so because Daniel had a pristine record. They were not able to find anything against Daniel in regards to the kingdom. And so they conclude that, hey, if we're going to find anything against this guy, we got to use his religion to somehow bring accusation against him, which could be our first point of application, which is, we need to be like Daniel and make it difficult for people to persecute us. Much like Jesus made it very difficult for them to crucify him because of the clean living that he lived, because of the pure life that he had. It was very difficult. As a matter of fact, at the end, they had to bring false witnesses together. They had to twist his words. And even then, when they presented him to Pilate, even Pilate wasn't convinced that he was worthy of death. He recognized that they were just bringing him to him because of envy. Jesus made it very difficult for them to persecute him, just as Daniel made it very difficult for them to persecute him because of his the way that he lived and the way that he was disciplined and lived his life. And that should be our encouragement too, is that we need to make it hard for people to try to slander us and persecute us and malign us by living a life that is admirable, that is difficult to speak against. And so Daniel gives us a good example of that. But what we want to focus on for our devotion today is further along in the story, because when they try to bring accusation against Daniel, they have King Darius sign this law that if anyone prays to anyone else besides King Darius for the next 30 days, that they were to be thrown into the lion's den. This is one of the most famous stories found in the book of Daniel. And it says specifically in verse 10, now when Daniel knew that the document was signed, so he wasn't ignorant of the fact that this document was signed, he entered his house. Now in his roof chamber he had windows open toward Jerusalem, and he continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks before his God, as he had been doing previously. And we see as we read more into the story that he actually does get thrown in the lion's den, and God delivers him from that. But what we want to focus in on is just how determined Daniel was to stick to his prayers, his 3 times a day prayers, each and every day, even though it could mean him being thrown in the lion's den. He did it the same way. He didn't change what he was doing. He wasn't going to be intimidated by some law, by this Gentile nation. He was going to continue to do what he had always done, and that is spend special time with the Lord in prayer 3 times a day. And I'm inspired by this story of Daniel, and hopefully all of us are inspired by this story of Daniel. Is it the case that we too are as determined to stick to the spiritual disciplines that help us in our spiritual life? I think oftentimes it's very easy for us to become sidetracked, and very easy to just kind of throw aside particular spiritual disciplines. Maybe we try to have a morning quiet time with the Lord, and we just let little things distract us, or little things keep us from waking up a little early to do that, or to carve out time to spend time with the Lord. Maybe when it comes to doing our daily reading, we wait until everything else is done and then try to find time to do our reading. The list could go on. Maybe we put aside worshiping the Lord. Maybe we're easily knocked off track when it comes to spending time of just sitting in the presence of God and worshiping the Lord. I think Daniel teaches us to have a heart of determination when it comes to the spiritual disciplines. That is, not to give up so easily, not to allow ourselves to become distracted. Now, there are some pressing matters that we have to attend to. That's definitely true. But are the things that really distract us really that pressing? Or do we just kind of wait until everything else is done, kind of just put God kind of on the end of the list, the last of the list, after our to-do list is done? Then if we have time, we'll spend time with the Lord and do our reading or spend time in prayer or worship with the Lord. If that's the case, we're probably not going to have a very consistent, spiritual, disciplined life. We could learn a little bit from Daniel to be determined to say, you know what, I'm not going to let anything rob me of my quiet time with the Lord. I'm not going to let anything rob me from spending time in the Word, reflecting on the Word, meditating on the Word, reading the Word. I'm not going to allow anything to keep me from worshiping the Lord each and every day, spending time with the Lord just in awe of His presence, drawing my heart close to Him, and desiring Him above everything else. I'm not going to let anything get in the way of me doing that. Daniel wouldn't even let this law that was passed that could have gotten him into the lion's den, which actually did get him in the lion's den. He didn't let that keep him from remaining devoted to the Lord and sticking to the things that would honor God and that would help him in his own spiritual walk. So I think we can all be inspired by Daniel as we read this story today. So as we read it, let's be encouraged. Let's have our zeal for the spiritual disciplines enlivened all the more as we read about this faithful man, Daniel, who was determined to spend time with the Lord and to turn his attention to God, even if it meant dire consequences. So these are some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.